Welcome to episode 18 of the Arizona Report. My name is David Meek, Arizona licensed real estate broker, and today's issue is about the power of homeowner associations. I have a guest that's going to shed some light on what's happening and something that you need to be aware of if you are buying a home here in the Valley that is in a homeowners association. And chances of that are about 2 out of 3. This morning I was online and did a quick search of all the homes for sale in the metro area. About 68% as of this morning are in a homeowners association. So if you're a home buyer or a current homeowner in an HOA, this is a story that you need to hear. My guest is Kathy Roscoe, and she has written this book, HOA and Exposé, and it is specifically about homeowners associations and property management firms and some abuses of power that are happening here and have happened in the Valley. I bought this book off of Kathy's website, and I'm in the process of reading it. I'm almost to the end, and I thought she has a very powerful story to tell, and people need to know about this. To that point, there was a story November 14th of 2017 written by Jessica Boehm and Catherine Rager of the Arizona Republic, and it's about just these same abuses. It's titled HOA's Leading Surge in Phoenix Area Foreclosures. I'm going to read you an excerpt of this news article. HOAs are foreclosing on a record number of homeowners for as little as $1,200 in missed maintenance payments, according to an Arizona Republic investigation. And homeowners who thought that their mortgage lender was the only party that could seize property are losing their homes at sheriff's auctions, sometimes for just $100 more than they owe. It's become a huge issue. Arizona Real Estate Commissioner Judy Lowe said most homeowners don't understand the foreclosure process, and most don't know their HOA can foreclose. Arizona allows an HOA to foreclose after a year of missed payments or a debt of $1,200. But when HOAs add legal fees and interest of payments, the debt can more than quadruple in a year. Well, my guest today will tell us all about that. At the very end of this episode, I'll let you know where to get her book. If you are a home buyer, a homeowner, a real estate broker, or otherwise involved in residential real estate in Phoenix, you need to read this book. Her name is Kathy Roscoe, and Kathy has been involved in the HOA and property management industries here in Phoenix for over 25 years. She's also sold homes, and she's managed commercial properties. Kathy is on the line. Kathy, welcome to the Arizona Report.
Hi, David. How are you?
Great. I appreciate your time today. This is an important story, and I think more people need to know about this, which is precisely why I wanted to do this episode. Tell me, Kathy, property management firms, what role do they have, and what do they do for HOAs?
Well, they should be executing all board decisions, handling the day-to-day maintenance, ensuring rules are being complied with. They should not be making decisions for the board or membership, except in cases where it has been specifically noted in meeting minutes that the board has deferred a decision to the management company. They should also be advising on certain things, such as if a brand new building has a roof collapsing, the manager should be sophisticated enough to advise the board to hire a construction defect CD attorney and construction consultant to find the issue. They should not be ignoring the issue until the statute of limitations has expired, nor should they try to handle the situation themselves. The construction defect issue used to be my number one concern. Now it's the rash of foreclosures that these HOAs are involved in.
And you've seen this from the inside because you've worked for the property management companies. You've been involved with the HOAs. Tell me, what is happening right now between the HOAs, the attorneys they engage, the property management firms? And I want to emphasize, too, the bulk of the homeowners associations and the boards out there and the property management firms and these attorneys, everybody's operating above, most are operating above board, and there isn't a problem. But in the examples where there is abuse, it is egregious. And tell us what you've been seeing that's been happening that's causing these problems.
Well, first I want to say you are correct that the vast majority of board members who volunteer to represent their communities are good people and they're trying to do the right thing. But the most serious concern that I have is this disturbing trend of moving to foreclose on a property as the first method of attempting to collect assessment. This is wrong any way you look at it. It is wrong, and the citizens need to become informed and demand that it be stopped. I am an advocate of raising the bar for the dollar figure that a homeowner owes that would be allowed to trigger the foreclosure action. I don't believe that $1,200 is equitable. And I've seen cases through the Maricopa County Recorder and Assessor's Office where there's plenty of evidence that, as Jessica has written in her article, homeowners were being served with a foreclosure notice when they owed less than $500. And the statute is very, very clear. 12 months for $1,200 in assessment, not including late fees, not including attorney fees, not including fines.
And that's where
the dollar figure is assessment.
Right. So $1,200 in assessments delinquent is that trigger. That's not attorney's fees. That's not fees from the board. That's not late fees. But you've seen abuses where this is people have been foreclosed on, and this is happening to about 300 homeowners a year in the valley are actually being foreclosed on because of delinquent HOA dues, less than $1,200, or I should say $1,200 or more is the threshold. But you're seeing some abuse of that guideline.
I believe it's more than 300 a year. I believe it's more like 300 a month.
300 a month. Okay.
The numbers could be higher. You would have to talk to Jessica to see if she has updated her figures. I think the incentive is obviously higher when property values have increased because there's more equity in the home. That's further incentive to take the property.
And you're exactly right. What I noticed and what I picked up from this article was that when real estate prices took a nosedive in the real estate crisis, the homeowners associations and the property management companies could not collect the dues because 1 out of 10 homes was vacant and nobody had the money to pay. When the market improved and home values shot north, that's when this started happening. As the property started appreciating, these property management companies were realizing that they could use this tool to take the fees that they had been denied during the real estate crisis.
Correct. Yes, actually, when the market collapsed, many homeowners were underwater in their properties, and so therefore, when there's no equity, there's no incentive to take the property.
Right.
It's the same philosophy that the banks follow, is they will sit on the property a little bit longer until value starts to go up.
You have a story, Kathy, about a veteran, and you touched on it in our pre-interview. Could you tell me more about that story? And it has an unfortunate ending, but I think it's an important story to tell.
It's a very important story to tell, and let me just say that when I was working in the industry and this happened, I didn't know about it. But I heard about it later through a homeowner advocacy group. So what happened was the HOA issued a $50 fine, and the homeowner was an older, mentally ill veteran. The fine issue regarding plants in his yard or whatever the issue was escalated to the HOA foreclosing on the homeowner. So when an HOA forecloses, there's a sheriff's auction. The sheriff, in this particular case, there was no deed of trust. When the sheriff arrived to evict the homeowner, this mentally ill veteran shot himself in the head.
Oh, gosh.
The state legislature responded with passing a law that does not allow the HOA to foreclose over fines. The HOA can only foreclose on a fine if they go to court and get a judgment. Now, I can't tell you how many times the people that I've known or I've managed their community or a friend of a friend will call and say, I got this letter from my HOA. Should I ignore it? And I always say, don't ignore the letter. Because what people don't understand, again, is this power that they have. So, in this sad commentary about this veteran who lost his home, in this case, the state legislature was very capable of taking action, but something this tragic had to occur first. And this is what the general public needs to be outraged over, is why.
And you've pointed out to me, and this has been my experience, Kathy, but 95% of homeowners who live in an association just pay their bills, they don't go to meetings, they don't get involved, and that's the first problem. People who live in a homeowners association need to go to these monthly board meetings, quarterly board meetings, and really get involved and find out what's happening and where the money's going.
That is the first and the biggest problem, because I'm being an insider, and I am the ultimate insider. Worked my way up over the years, and I asked a lot of questions, and the answers were a little bit disturbing. But it's the apathy of the vast majority of people who live in these communities. The bottom line is, if people didn't have this sort of apathetic attitude once they move into a community, a lot of these tragedies never occur.
Yes.
The good board members would never vote to foreclose on someone.
Right.
That own their home. They would. Now, in a lot of cases, the boards try to work with the owners, and the owners don't respond. So these are really difficult problems to solve, because as I said in a pre-interview, there's so many different dynamics at play involving the associations, the board, the management companies, the managers, some of the law firms, and the state government. So they're not easy to solve, but obviously I have ideas of how that can be done. What can be done to improve, the situation.
And it's here in your book. You've got another anecdote, Kathy, about a well-known neighborhood in Scottsdale where there was a similar foreclosure situation on an elderly person. Could you fill me in on that story?
Sure. So I stumbled upon this foreclosure on the Maricopa County Assessor's website and the Recorder's website when I was in communication with this particular association, and they had mentioned that they were just going to involve the attorney. So I went online to look to see who the attorney was, and I found this case. And what it was about 3 years ago, the homeowner owed $221. Billed on January 1st. On March 21st of the same year, the association's attorney, at the direction of the board, I would assume, went to court, obtained a simultaneous money judgment foreclosure. Now, what that is they first proceed with asking the judge for a money judgment for the $221. And they already have the subsequent paperwork filled out, adding the late fees, attorney fees, whatever other fees get added in, and then they move to foreclose. According to ARS 33-1803, in a planned community, the association may not include late fees, fines, attorney fees, in the amount owed in a foreclosure action. Now, in this case, this had to have occurred because they listed the debt to the association in the amount of $221. A lot of these larger master plan communities have thousands of members, and if they're not in a sub-association where they have a gated community, private streets, a community pool, they pay somewhere in the vicinity of $200 a year to be in their master plan community. Okay, and so what happened here was the attorneys lumped in their fees to take the amount over and above the $1,200 threshold of the state law.
So this was billed
and
on
the state law is very clear. You cannot do that. But they are doing it.
Billed on January 1st, and this was filed at the courts on, did you say March 21st? So less than 90 days for $220 plus fees.
And the sheriff, when the sheriff sold the property, which was quite easy, the property was worth $550,000.
Where did the money go?
That is the question that I also have.
Yeah.
So I say that in reality, unless I misread Jessica's article, this is happening to about 300 families a week in Arizona. The threshold is $1,200 for 1 year. Now, this particular gentleman did not meet either qualification, but that didn't stop them from taking the property, and then it was immediately resold. And it's tragic, and this is happening because people don't realize what the agenda has become. And I can tell you that when an association garnishes rent, if the property is rented, or if they garnish salary or so forth, the attorneys make double in that method of collection. So I have yet to find anyone in the industry to explain to me why they're moving to foreclose as a first method of collection.
And I've got just a couple minutes left, and I want to get to some more questions that I have for you, Kathy. You mentioned that property management firms and their employees aren't regulated. There's no license to be a property manager in Arizona. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Why is that? Why aren't they regulated if they're handling? They've got these trust accounts worth $500,000, $1 million. You would think that there would be regulation there. Is there a reason?
Well, yeah. The management companies, the majors, do not want regulation. That is the reason. Some of the smaller companies think that some stricter form of regulation is necessary, but the major management companies, the big ones that have 200, 300, 500 accounts, they are going to fight licensing their managers tooth and nail.
And these are the firms that have a lobbying footprint with the local legislature. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. What is I know you've talked to several legislators. What is the Arizona legislature doing to resolve this? You mentioned they stepped in the case after the suicide of the veteran who was foreclosed on for the $50 citation. What happened there, and what other steps are you seeing the Arizona legislature taking?
Well, I visited with a very high-ranking member of the state legislature a few years ago, and that was on a situation that happened in a community that I used to live in. And I was very bluntly told that if this particular member of the legislature called a meeting so I could show them this video of what occurred and what a travesty it was, probably only 3 people out of 100 would show up. And so, what is happening is the probably about 20 years ago, the major companies got together and they created political action committees.
I see.
And I talk about this in the book. These political action committees are there to stave off regulation, period. And they raise an enormous amount of money, which gets filtered through the system, state capital, and wherever else that they've got a footprint. And it's a good question why 97 of 100 members of the legislature in this state don't have an interest in hearing or seeing this story and taking some sort of action. They were willing to take action in the case of a veteran who shot himself in the head, but there are lots of other sordid stories going on where people are really being hurt, families are being hurt, and they don't have an interest in it.
And that's, unfortunately, hopefully your book, people will read this book and realize that this is happening at a level that needs to be addressed and take action. You and I talked earlier about if someone's buying a home in Phoenix that's inside a homeowners association, what can they do? What are the red flags that they look for, and what can they do to get involved?
Well, first of all, I do recommend that any buyer, if they're very serious about getting into a community, know what you're getting into. It's not just the house. You're buying into a neighborhood. You're buying into a corporate culture that in a deed-restricted community. And as long as those deed restrictions include a statute that allows foreclosure, that people need to take that very, very seriously. I would suggest, according to state law, that buyer would need permission in writing, and that can be a handwritten note, it can be an email, from the seller allowing the buyer to attend the board meeting as their guest. Attendance at a board meeting off the cuff is a great way to make a determination of how the community is being run.
And you're looking...
the first thing to... Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
The first thing to look for would be, are you welcomed when you walk in the door? A good board wants participation from the community. They want people to volunteer for committees. They want people to come to the meeting.
And there needs to be good turnover for these board members. If you see a board full of people who've been there for 15 or 20 years, that's a bad sign.
Well, sometimes it's just a sign that no one else wants to donate any of their claim. That in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. But sometimes it is a board that won't relinquish control.
Right. Well,
you can pretty much tell when you walk in the door if you're welcome and if the board is willing to explain things, answer questions, ask the homeowners, what do you think about this? What do you think we should do? That's the general philosophy that I would follow, where you know that it's being run in a more professional manner than versus the board that says, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Well, you weren't invited. There's the door.
Right. Yeah, those are, and as a home buyer, as a prospective home buyer, you're able to look at the budget. Make sure there's enough money in the rainy day fund, the capital reserve, into the budget to cover any emergency expenses, things like that. Kathy, in closing here, I want to read to the buyers a paragraph from your book that just jumped out to me. It is this. You write, "I can only say to my readers, 30 years ago when I stumbled across my first HOA and noticed that something was horribly wrong, my father said to me, what I now say to all of you, do something." I like that.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy, thank you for your time. I've got just a minute or so left here, but I wanted to let the buyers know, again, the title of your book, HOA and Exposé. The author is Kathy Roscoe, Rosko. And Kathy, how much is your book, and where can people buy this if they're interested in reading?
The book is available on my website, HOAexposé.com. It is priced at $18.95. and it's just over 200 pages. And I tell a lot of, well, I hope you think they're funny stories, but, I am trying to educate the reader as well as entertain.
There is humor in the book, but it's interlaced with a lot of shocking anecdotes about things that have happened inside the property management firms and the HOA boards that would just it'll make your hair curl. But Kathy, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show, and I want people to read your book. It's important to me, and I'd like to get your story out.
Okay, well, thank you, David.
My pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to this episode number 18 of the Arizona Report. My name is David Meek, licensed Arizona real estate broker. If you'd like to see more about my thoughts on the Phoenix real estate market, my website, ArizonaReport.com, or my studio number, 480-999-MOVE. That's 480-999-6683. Until next time, we'll see you then.